We have failed to take a no-nonsense approach to corruption. I really think that we have made significant strides. I welcome the ushering in of the government of national unity. The president, I think, has definitely taken the right step in terms of setting up a commission. We need to find a way of striking a mutually beneficial relationship. The US matters.
Welcome to In This Economy with SMWX and Standard Bank Private, where we unpack the forces driving South Africa's future, one conversation at a time. Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX and this episode of In This Economy with Standard Bank Private, where we explore South Africa's future and its economy. Today, I'm extremely excited to be joined by the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, someone who shares profound and important insights on our country, its future, and its economy, none other than Busi Mavuso. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, Sizwe.
I'm curious, before we dive into some important economic issues, was there a moment in your early life and development that you believe set you on the trajectory for the impactful work that you do in business?
So I think it has to be a culmination of everything. I don't think it's any one particular thing, although I was raised by a very strong and independent woman who taught me to be just as strong and independent. So grew up in Soweto, born and bred there, matriculated at Orlando East, Lufenza Girls High in 1994. Couldn't go to university full-time, so I actually had to enter the workforce prematurely at a tender age of 16. I still don't know how I was employed at an age of 16, but trustingly enough, I was. And I therefore had to do all my tertiary education through correspondence. So UNISA is my alma mater. And I've done my undergraduate degree, honors, masters. I'm busy with my doctorate at the moment. And and it has been that journey since then. Started off in the banking industry for the first 7 years. Always wanted to be a chartered accountant, even though I really didn't know what a chartered accountant did. I just knew I was good at maths, I was good at accounting, and I thought I needed to be a chartered accountant. And I finally attained that dream of being a chartered accountant at age 40.
Wow.
7 years ago,
Wonderful.
And I think one of the things that still keep me awake at night is precisely how difficult it continues to be, even for those who come after us, to actually access education. And I really think that that is the one thing that we actually need to meaningfully look at, in this country.
Inspiring story of dedication and lifelong learning.
Absolutely.
That's led you to one of the most important roles in business in South Africa as CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Talk to us about your journey there to the helm and why you think Business Leadership South Africa is an important institution in the country.
It's an important institution because of the constituency it represents. It's important because of the footprint it has in the South African economy. Members of BLSA contribute 35% of the country's GDP. They employ about 2.5 million people in this country. They contribute about 390 billion rands in taxes. And I think that is just the direct impact. There is obviously the indirect and the induced effects, of their footprint. Yeah. So these are the CEOs and the captains of industry in this country, CEOs of large entities, JSE-listed companies, multinationals, the foreign direct investment and local domestic investment that we actually so much need in this country to be able to grow the economy. Those decisions are actually made in the boardrooms of the CEOs that I actually represent. So that is why the institution matters.
Yeah, wow. I didn't quite realize the footprint was that extensive.
Absolutely.
So you control the money, basically.
Absolutely. We control the money. We're not called white monopoly capital for nothing. So yeah, absolutely.
On this series, we're really trying to explore the economy, give people an insight into what makes the economy tick what's going right as well as what's going wrong. And I wonder, what do you think, firstly, we're doing right? You've been a very critical, and I mean that in the best sense, voice in South Africa for a long time, trying to make us live up to our potential. But in the same vein, you've also contributed to some of the things that are going right in our country. And we all know there's a lot that's, shall we say, imperfect.
Yeah.
What do you think we're doing right, though, economically?
Sizwe, I think the structural reform agenda and path that we're on as a country is absolutely critical. And I remember in 2018, when we started screaming this message to government that for us to be able to change the economic trajectory of this country after the state capture project, you need to implement the structural reforms. I remember the pushback then from government, to say that business is shifting the goalpost. Our job is supposed to be creating jobs. So if we now talk about the structural reform agenda, we are actually just trying to derail, and deviate from that which we're supposed to deliver on. So I'm glad that so many years later, you've got the very same government who actually stands, whether it's the State of the Nation address or it's the budget speech, whatever platforms, now they understand the importance of the structural reform agenda. It's important, Sizwe, because what's happening in the country at the moment, which gives me the great hope, is that there is this intentional shift from the current monopolistic structures that are actually not working. They are not working because they are government-led. And when you don't have a capable state, like South Africa has not had for quite a while, it then deprives the economy of growth. It chokes the economy. We saw how we have experienced the level of blackouts that we've actually experienced and what the impact of that has been on the economy. So if you continue to have electricity being generated by just Eskom, you are then in trouble. It's okay if the country is functioning as it should. It's okay if you've got a capable state. But we didn't have a capable state for quite a while. I think the 6th administration and the 7th administration are trying their best. So the structural reform agenda, therefore, opens up, those sectors to allow private sector participation, which then means that if we were to have a state capture 2.0 in this country, we are not going to be at the mercy of the crooks and the criminals that are actually going to be at the helm of leading this country. We are therefore going to be in a position to can continue to generate electricity because you would have many other players generating electricity. And you are seeing that private sector participation and that shift, from that monopolistic market structures happening in a whole lot of structures. I mean, Transnet, the headlines, for instance, this morning is talking about the fact that Transnet is being downgraded because S&P is actually saying that we don't believe that you've got the right capital structure. We don't believe that the necessary maintenance and the targets that you've actually put for yourselves, which is 250 million tons by 2030, we don't believe that you're actually going to be able to meet that. Now, if you have private sector participation, private sector companies running locomotives, running ports. I mean, currently at the moment, if you speak to any of the companies who are actually importing and exporting, they actually do so from Mauritius, from Namibia, from Mozambique, because Transnet is just not in a position to actually, carry the load, that it's actually supposed to carry. So it seriously, therefore, impedes the much needed economic growth. So the fact that you've got a government that is committed on the structural reform agenda, for me, I think is the most surest, sustainable ways of ensuring that we actually change our economic trajectory as a country.
And in terms of that agenda, what do you think is the logical, most important next step that needs to be taken from a policy perspective? Is it ports? Is it some other thing? If you had a wish list and we could decisively achieve one major new thing next, what do you think that should be?
Because there's already structural reforms happening in a whole lot of sectors, maybe we can shift from sectors, Sizwe, and move to people. Right? The same thing that we're doing in terms of bringing in external players to play in industries that they've not played in before. Does the running of this country have to continue to be by career politicians? at what point do we put the best man for the job? In terms of running certain ministries and running certain departments. If we are serious about the professionalization of the public service, if we are serious about building a capable state. It was interesting the other day when the president was talking about the suspension or leave of absence of the Minister of Police. He's bringing in, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the professor is bringing, he's a professor, right?
Yes,
I don't think the guy is actually a politician. He's not a career politician, or at least I don't know him to be, right? And I'm also not sure what credentials he has for this portfolio, but I really think that we need to cast our net wide as a country.
Agreed.
We cannot continue to have an incapable state as if we are short of talent, because we do have a lot of people who know what they are doing. A lot of people who are actually, South Africa has so many centers of excellence. So it's therefore unfortunate that we continue to limit ourselves to a limited pool, and we continue recycling the same people when we can actually cast our net wider and we can actually benefit, from the intelligence, from the depth, from the substance, of so many of the talent that we have in this country.
Such an important point, you referenced this case of a minister coming from academia, and I think of academia where I work, where there's so much talent, business,
absolutely,
the arts, all kinds of places where people are doing things at a globally competitive level, but we don't seem to have found the right formula to bring that into the national and state picture. And if we could do that, it would be a matter of time before we were back to punching above our weight globally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Punching above our weight as we should, because South Africa matters. I mean, when you look at the African story, when you look at the fact that we're the fastest growing population in the world, when you look at the fact that the market of the future is going to be Africa, when you look at the fact that in 2050, we are going to be moving from this 1.4 billion people that we have at the moment to 2.7 billion people, and the rest of the world is actually doing the opposite. It's actually declining. So they've got capital that they want to invest, and they can't invest it if there isn't markets. So they are therefore going to be coming to Africa to be investing. South Africa needs to position itself as the gateway to the African continent, because when you look at, we're the most resilient, we are the most diversified, we are the most technologically advanced, we are better we offer better integration into the global market, and deep and liquid capital markets and so forth and so forth. So it is unfortunate, that South Africa has actually not been living up, to its height, as it were.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what you said about Transnet, because if the economy is ultimately to grow like some of the fastest growing economies in the world right now, exports are going to be key to that mix.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at our mineral resources, agricultural produce.
Yes.
And what seems to be happening is we have all this wealth and all this potential, but we actually can't get it out or bring that which we need to get in fast enough. And that's a major bottleneck to unleashing economic potential.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that is why, therefore, the private sector participation is actually important. I've been quite encouraged, Sizwe, with where the country is. I really think that we have made significant strides. I welcome the ushering in of the government of national unity. I really think that we needed to be here, Sizwe, as a country. I think where we were was untenable. I am encouraged about the energy, the vision, the commitment, the direction that a whole lot of the current ministers in the 7th administration are actually articulating. I remember we had a conversation with Minister Barbara Creasy of Transnet, of transport in November, a few months after she assumed office. And it was so encouraging to listen to her talk about what success looks like for her department. She reduced it, not many stories. She reduced it to 5 numbers. And I won't remember all the numbers, but she said, I'm going to be guided by in terms of what we need to transport from a locomotive's perspective, 250 million tons. And I think said people that need to come through our airport, land in our airports. I think she spoke about 30 million people. She spoke about, 15 million people that we need to transport through our passenger rails, and the air freight that we actually need to do. I don't remember the number, but she reduced it to 5 numbers. She said, success for my department is actually going to be based on these 5 numbers. It was very interesting for me to hear government official and minister break down, a vision and what success and KPIs actually like that. Because if you have it broken it down in numbers like that, Sizwe, already in year 1, if you are not going to meet the 250 million tons, you can actually see, because then you can say, I'm currently sitting at 170 million, I need to get 250 million in the next 5 years, 80 million tons that I need to get, which means I'm going to have to be tracking at least 18 million tons every. So if in year 1, in year 2, I'm not hitting the 80 million tons additional, then I need to actually pivot and change my strategy. Yeah. So that is the kind of, I think, engagements, and I think the richness of conversations that we're actually, sitting with at the moment. But I'm also very encouraged about how they seek to co-create solutions with business, how they recognize the importance of business, as a constituency. So we are finally, I think, dealing with the trust deficit that has existed for a long time between business and government. We are being seen, as business, as a critical stakeholder that can actually contribute to changing the economic trajectory of this country.
One of the examples of that partnership has been on energy. We're a country that's very loud and a country that has no problem voicing criticism.
Yeah.
But I was listening to a speech you gave recently where you reminded us that around 2 years ago, when you went to turn on the lights, you didn't know whether they would come on or off.
Exactly.
And it was a very, very worrying period for our country. Business and government came together to address that crisis. We're not completely out of the woods, but we are in a very different place as far as energy security now. You have unique insight on how that partnership worked. What do you think are the lessons that can be learned there about how the state, the private sector can come together around national priorities?
Sizwe, intentionality. I think we've been very intentional about what we actually wanted to achieve, intentionality. But I think being clear about what are the important interventions to actually touch on? Because you can come up with 20 things and do nothing. We agreed on 3, just 3, and we were very clear in terms of what we wanted to achieve, out of those 3. So we said energy, we said transport and logistics, and we said crime and corruption. As far as crime and corruption is concerned, we said we'd like to exit, the FATF grey listing, to ensure that, because there are countries who cannot invest in you if you continue to be grey listed, because it just makes it difficult, to bring money in and out of the country and whatever the case is. So we are therefore not viewed in positive light. From a transport and logistics perspective, we said we'd actually like to ensure the operational efficiency of Transnet, and obviously the work that has been done, the network statement, the private sector participation unit that has been set up by the Department of Transport is a step in that direction. Definitely our biggest success has been in electricity. We said we wanted to end load shedding, and we have ended load shedding. Sizwe. We have ended structural load shedding. When we experienced the blackouts that we experienced as a country, it was because supply was not meeting demand. We had a 6,000 megawatt gap that we actually needed to plug. We have successfully plugged that gap. The next part that we're actually working on at the moment is the expansion of the grid. The minister speaks about 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines that need to be built, 400 billion rands of investment that actually needs to be raised to build those transmission lines. The target, as per the business government partnership for this year, is to build at least 1,200 kilometers of those lines. And we're actually well on our way in terms of achieving that, because we are bringing a lot of megawatts onto the grid, and we are not, the grid is not, if we're not going to expand the grid, then it becomes difficult to actually well that into the end consumer, as it were. In 2025, we're going to be bringing in another 4 gigawatts onto the grid. I mean, if you look at the pipeline, billions of rands I can't, the number escapes me, but billions of rands, that are actually on the pipeline to bring in energy generation. So I really think that we've done a phenomenal job in as far as that is concerned. I think the business government partnership that we have put together and that we have experienced as a country is something that can be exported to other emerging economies that are actually trying to find a way of how business and government, as the two biggest social partners in any country, can actually work together to change the economic trajectory. And I really think we've done a phenomenal job in as far as that is concerned. And precisely because of that partnership, Sizwe, I am confident that we are a country on the mend. I am confident that we are a jurisdiction. We are well on our way to being a jurisdiction that matters. We are hosting the G20 this year, and we are going to have a very substantive story to tell, in terms of where South Africa is, in terms of what we have attained, in terms of what our plans are, for the next 12, 18 months and what. So we really are in a good place as a country.
There's no doubt major progress has been made on the energy front. Transnet, I think, is in the process of becoming.
Yeah.
I would say the other priority you mentioned, crime and corruption, is coming under some serious pressure right now.
Yes.
We have recently had these revelations or allegations about, high-level influence in government from potential criminal elements in our society. Violent crime continues to be a real problem. And of course, these have a social effect.
Yeah.
But economically speaking, this is something that can make investors squeamish about the country.
Absolutely.
How do you react to where we are on crime and corruption in light of, these recent developments?
I think we are naive as a country to think that the remnants of the state capture project are not there anymore. We are naive as a country to think that we have successfully gotten rid in institutions, in government departments, in SOEs, of the state capture elements. Because the state capture project, Sizwe, it ran deep, it ran wide, it ran very high. And I think a lot of institutions are still continue to suffer from trying to get rid of the state capture elements and remnants. And I really think that we have come from an unfortunate phase as a country where we made stealing, looting, thieving, corruption fashionable. We have sent a message to South Africans that crime pays. This fish called South Africa has been rotten from the head for far too long. People don't do what you say, they do what you do. And we have failed to take a non-nonsense approach to corruption. You continue to have thieves masquerading as government officials. You continue to have people who have been fingered, who have been accused of the most heinous crimes being members of parliament. And unfortunately, when you look at that picture, the message that you are sending to the rest of the country is that you can be accused, of these crimes, and you can still be a member of parliament. You can still hold a high office, you can still. So it therefore, and unless we have to get to a point where we stop talking from both sides of our mouths. We have to get to a point where what we say and what we do, is step in lock, right? I think and we are not there, as a country. So I think the current allegations in as far as crime and corruption is concerned on the Minister of Police are very unfortunate, because then you look at it and you say, if the custodians of rule of law in this country are accused of such crimes, then who is supposed to be taking care of, right, these criminal syndicates? If we are in cahoots with them, if we are in bed with them, so it's very concerning. The president, I think, has definitely taken the right step in terms of setting up a commission. I think when you look back at what happened with the Nugent Commission and what we achieved in as far as that is concerned, Sizwe tells us that if these commissions are being set up properly and they are being given the right structures and the right support, they definitely can work. But then the commission will be successful in doing its work and giving you the report. And I guess this has been one of our biggest failures as well. What you do with that report also matters.
Absolutely.
We're still sitting with 6 versions of the state capture project, 6 versions of the report, of the state capture project report, which actually names a lot of people that are currently in office, and nothing has actually been done, about them. You still have ministers who mess up in one department and they are shifted in another department, no action being taken against them. So when I listen to the South Africans who actually say, this, nothing much is going to come from this, it's also going to somehow, end up nowhere, I actually understand where that is coming from. So I really think that we're going to have to start taking, more decisive action, when it comes to the issues of corruption. Otherwise, it's not just about South Africans, but I guess the rest of the world, the rest of the international community whose investment we actually want to bring into this country. If crime and corruption is one of the biggest issues that we actually have to solve for, we actually have to demonstrate not just in word, but in deed, in terms of, how serious we are about dealing with it.
You actually make a very interesting allusion to the Nugent Commission, and I was thinking about this just last night, actually, because I was trying to think, has there ever been a commission of inquiry that has actually achieved anything? Yeah. And the track record is not stellar, but that commission was interesting in that it lasted 7 months. And I mean, many people disagree with its outcomes, but there were outcomes and the president acted quite quickly on those outcomes. Whereas on the other hand, the other type of commission is one that drags on for a very long time, costs a lot of money, and the outcomes are ambiguous at best. We need to make sure this is the former kind of commission and not the latter.
It has to be, especially after the president took a very decisive and bold move, in acting against one of his cabinet members, one of the deputy ministers recently. The message that is sent, with that action was that I'm going to be decisive. I'm not going to take any nonsense from any of my ministers. You are going to toe the line or else. So a few weeks later, you are now faced with even more grave allegations of one of your cabinet members. Your actions, cannot be wishy-washy. You have to continue to demonstrate the same strength, and decisiveness, and determination. So if it's not going, honestly, I really think that leave of absence, whatever that means, is not commensurate with the serious allegations. It should have been suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. I really think that would have sent, because I don't think that there's much you can do. It's allegations at this point. They need to be proven, but I really think that a suspension would have sent, I think, a stronger message, Sizwe, than absence of leave or whatever this thing is.
We have an interesting geopolitical environment on top of all of this. You alluded to South Africa hosting the G20 summit. What do you think are the opportunities that summit presents our country to put our best economic foot forward in the years to come?
So we were very clear when we started and we assumed the presidency of both the G20 and the P20 that we want to use this opportunity to showcase South Africa as an investment destination, to try and attract investment into the country. We need investment because we don't have enough domestic savings to can actually revitalize and boost, economic growth, in this country. So you need the foreign direct investment that can hopefully see us, growing our economy at decent levels. We said when we started with this presidency that we want to showcase that South Africa continues to be a force to be reckoned with when you put us against the other countries, that we, in this cluster of emerging economies, developing economies, and in that cluster there's about 35, 40 countries, Sizwe. And South Africa sits, in that cluster. And when foreign direct investors or investment and capital looks, at where they should be investing their money, emerging economies, developing economies is where they look. And South Africa, in that list of 35 countries, has actually been at the bottom, because of the many challenges that we've actually faced. So we actually said that we want to actually reclaim our position in that cluster and be seen to be a force, to be reckoned with. We said we actually want to be seen as a country that is on the mend, as a jurisdiction that matters, as a country that is actually towards, addressing its challenges. We want to showcase the brilliant work that we have done, the impact of the structural reform agenda. And I really think that we have done a decent job in as far as that is concerned. I was very encouraged when I saw the symposium that the Minister of Public Works hosted, I think about 2 months ago, where he came up with a construction book of 250 projects, and he highlighted 7 mega projects that investors can actually invest in. Because if you think about it, that has always been our issue, that we sell a good story to say South Africa is where you need to land if you want to actually penetrate and have access and have a footprint in the African continent. And the follow-up to that is that, okay, so where are the investment opportunities? Where are the bankable projects? And we've been falling short in terms of highlighting where the opportunities are and where the bankable projects are. So when the minister actually launched that construction book and these 7 mega projects, I think that is the step in the right direction, because when these prime ministers and presidents from the rest of the world, descend, in South Africa at the end of the year for the year-end summit and the many visits that they keep on, making, during the year, then we can actually point them, to projects and opportunities that they can actually invest in. So if we actually get investment out of this, that is our true north. That should be our litmus test. If
Absolutely.
we can get companies actually investing and saying that South Africa is where I actually want to land, that is what success would look like for our presidency.
And how does the B20 fit in with this broader G20 project, and how do we harness the B20 initiative?
So the B20 is the business leg of the G20. So the work that we do there is we come up with policy recommendations in terms of what are some of the issues that need attention for the global economy to continue to prosper.
Right.
So there are 6 task forces that are always there, year in, year out, irrespective of which country is hosting the G20. And then as a host country, you then have an opportunity to can add 2 or 3 more task forces of issues that are important to you. The 6 task forces are trade and investment, digital transformation, integrity and compliance, energy and just transition, infrastructure and finance. We added sustainable agricultural systems and industrial innovation. I'm forgetting a 6th work stream. I will remember it just now. So we therefore normally have conversations in as far as trade and investment is concerned. For instance, we'll have conversations around what are some of the issues that we actually need, to be, or to discuss or to actually be awake to, when it comes to trade and investment. How is trade and investment for all of us as countries? How is it affected? What are some of the things and interventions that we actually need to put in place in as far as that is concerned? The one interesting one for me is when you look at the impact of climate change for the entire global economy is what Europe is actually doing in terms of introducing CBAM, the carbon border adjustment, mechanism, which means that and a lot of companies that are actually exporting to Europe have already been given, letters to say that if we are not going to see a reduction of the carbon content in the product that you export to Europe, then the product that you export is actually going to be met with carbon tax, carbon taxes. And I think that is just going to increase, the cost of, production and of exporting and whatever the case is. So we are therefore, and it's not just South Africa that is actually going to be affected. Europe has actually served these letters to all the countries that it actually deals with. And because we're all struggling with this transition, we are therefore trying to have a conversation which says, is it possible, for Europe to either probably maybe delay the implementation of the tax, or to probably maybe give some of the goods or some of the countries concessions and so forth. So those are the issues, that affect all of us as the global economy that we then deal with when it comes to the P20.
Absolutely. I mean, on this question of trade and taxes and tariffs, wow, what an interesting time to be alive. And South Africa's relationship with the US has just shot to the fore of the domestic and global agenda at the moment.
Yes.
This is a tough one because we are under some, attack may be a strong word, but there's very aggressive rhetoric coming our way. At the same time, we have very deep economic ties with the US, and we want to make sure we protect those ties. How should we navigate this tenuous moment in US-South Africa relations?
Yeah, I think when you're saying we're under attack, you're right. We are under attack, by the US. What's coming to us as South Africa, Sizwe, it's intentional, it's strategic, it's deliberate, it's premeditated, right? It's not haphazard, it's not. So I think we have to be very worried, as a country. I think the Oval Meeting conversations, set a good, foundation in terms of starting conversations, because before that, didn't look like, the two governments were actually conversing at all.
Yeah.
We need to find a way of striking a mutually beneficial relationship. The US matters, Sizwe. They are responsible for 30% of the global economy. They have 35% of the global population. They own 50% of the military intelligence, in the world. So they matter. I don't think we can actually minimize, their role and their impact. I was looking at what NAMSA was saying, the association of the auto industry, in terms of how the exports to the US since April, have gone down by 82%. How there are rumors of a Mercedes-Benz plant in the Eastern Cape shutting down. How some of the companies that are actually feeding into that, Mercedes-Benz supply chain are actually going to shut down. How the Eastern Cape economy is actually going to be decimated.
Absolutely.
In a country that has got 43% unemployment in terms of the expanded definitions, where you have more people that are unemployed than those that are employed in all the provinces except Gauteng and the Western Cape. This is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
The CEO of NAMSA is actually saying that this is not just a trade issue. It is a socio-economic crisis in the making. So the sooner our government finds a way of finding, each other with the US government, the better. We need to find a resolution. We are too small an economy. And yes, we can find other trading partners and whatever the cases, but currently we're exporting to about 100 countries, Sizwe. There's only 195 countries in the world. So there isn't much, right? Right, exactly. And all the other countries that are affected by these US tariffs are actually trying to do exactly the same that we're actually doing. So we really have to find a way of how we salvage this relationship.
Well, Busi Mavuso, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for the excellent work that you continue to do on our country, and all the best with that PhD as well.
Thank you. I need it. I need all the luck. Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure having you. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below with your thoughts. Make sure you tune in to this and many of the past and future episodes of In This Economy with Standard Bank Private, and keep it locked on SMWX. Take us to 300,000 subscribers. That's our next milestone.
Ayeye.